Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Atheon Lift. This is a community care series that's designed with you in mind. Today's session isn't just about careers, it's about confidence, it's about clarity, and taking the next step. You may be here because you've experienced a pivot, a pause, a layoff, or just a nudge that's pointing you in a new direction. Or you may be curious about what skills have to do with your career. We're going to focus on how to use the skills you already have and those you're building to open new doors. You'll hear from an amazing panel of people who've spent their careers helping others do exactly that through leadership development, immersive learning, skills based strategy, and bold reinvention. So let's dive into what's possible and the practical steps you can start to use today. I'd love to start by having the panel introduce themselves so you can learn a little bit more about them. Tania, could you start?
Certainly. Hello, everyone. My name is Tania DeSa. I am a workplace connection and leadership trainer, a workplace connection keynote speaker, and a leadership trainer to Fortune 500 leaders. But one thing you should really know about me is that I have navigated transitions through continents, through industries, through identity shifts, everything from pharmaceuticals to working at the World Health Organization, to doing my MBA, to being an entrepreneur. Identity shifts of being a single girl boss babe traveling the world to being a partner and a mom of three kids. And I know what it feels like to be in that messy middle. I truly believe that there's this power to connect the dots between cultures, between skills, between different chapters in our life. And I'm here today to dive in with all of you because I really believe that owning our narrative has immense power at this moment in time. So I'm excited to be here. Let's dive in.
Thanks so much, Tanya. Jill, can you introduce yourself next?
Hi, thank you. And My name is Jill Gluck, and I am the founder and the CEO of Modern Minds. And I'm a lifelong believer in the power of skills, not only to transform careers, lives, but also entire organizations. I've really seen them bridge the gap, and I've been architecting strategies within global world class organizations throughout the past 25 years. And now I'm very, very happy to have started my Modern Minds company to help not only organizations, but also individuals like you to bridge gaps and get you on track with the future of work and all of that that goes on in today's world of AI and the era of AI and disruption that we're in.
Thanks so much, Jill. And Mike.
Hey everyone, it's very nice to meet you all. My name's Mike Pino. Like Tanya, like Jill, have actually navigated an awful lot of shifts and changes in my life as well. I am the managing director currently of Problem Solutions. Formerly, I used to be a chief learning officer, a managing director of another firm. Had two startups go successfully to completion, had several that didn't. And I've got some patents. I've had some experience with that as well and built some technologies and some interoperability standards on skills and competencies. What I've actually known a lot about and watched over the years is how technology and how business are actually shifting and changing very dramatically. And the future that we have ahead of us is going to require us to be a lot different than what we've had in the past. This may be scary, and in some ways, the thing that we have to actually guard against is operating from a place of fear. And I guess to answer the question that Gina sort of asked, but I'm going to actually fill it out a little bit more. What would I want you to know about me? I think that, you know, one thing that people don't know about me is that I've actually got a few screenplays that have actually been optioned. I write screenplays with my younger brother, but I've watched a lot of the industry in film get decimated and changed by a lot of the technology that's out there. But it's not been in a way that's actually that's going to be destructive. It's just going to be disruptive. And the real challenge and opportunity that we have ahead is to find the new place. So we have to find a way to actually move out of fear and move into curiosity and find the place where we can make the biggest difference. And that's what I hope we actually are able to cover today.
Thanks so much, Mike. I am thrilled that I've actually had an opportunity to know Tanya, Jill, and Mike for more than a decade, and they are true leaders in this space. So I'm thrilled that they could all join us today. I'm Gina Genero, and I'm the Chief Skills and Innovation Officer and a co-founder here at Atheon. And I've spent more than 30 years of my career in the financial services space, and about 2/3 of that in talent and learning, including 5 years as a chief learning officer. My passion for more than a
Hi,
decade has
George.
been around skills and really
Oh, are
trying
we at
to
9? I thought we were at 10. I'm sorry. That's okay.
and equipping and enabling people to be able to prepare today for what's coming in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And I was a founding member of the World Economic Forum Skills Link Alliance, and have really taken those threads, that passion, into the work that I do every day now. Because I believe that if you start to build your skills now, if you're able to be nimble, if you're able to be creative, then you'll be able to assemble and reassemble those skills in amazing ways to prepare for what's next. So thank you for joining us for today's session. I think the best place maybe for us to start is actually to talk about skills. So, the world is shifting so fast. As Mike was saying, we're seeing huge transformation in every industry, in every walk of life, in everything that we're doing every day. And the old playbook just doesn't work anymore. So if we're trying to step into something new, how do we know what skills we should be looking at? So, Jill, can I start with you? Um, let's talk about what's working right now. What are the future ready skills that are actually helping people open doors?
Thanks, Gina. Yes, I get that question a lot of, future ready skills. And what I'm finding today is it's really the blend of the digital, human, and the higher cognitive skills that are really making a difference. So it's no longer just about, people knowing data literacy and, focusing just on that. It's really the other skills. So it's the problem solving skills. So the human side of the business. So using what you've learned as that foundational technical and data driven literacy and things like that, prompt engineering, all of those basic skills, and bringing them to life and making them align with business and problem solving, and bringing those power skills such as empathy, communication, and collaboration to amplify and adjusting to what's happening in this different space we are in today.
It's such a great frame, such a great way of thinking about it, Jill. And the interesting thing that I'm seeing, and I think you've said you see it too, is how in order to be successful with things like AI, you have to lead into the human spaces and the higher cognitive spaces, because that is what separates you from the technology and actually equips you to be able to use it effectively. So, what are you seeing in that? I know you've got a program where you're actually preparing people for future ready skills.
Yeah, so what we're encouraging people to do is, actually when they're collecting their skills is really just not to get those skills and check the box. It's actually applying them and learning from others. So really, with the skills that they're using, we're seeing a real amplification if they're networking and using the skills that they've seen and practicing them, and really showing and showcasing themselves within problem solving and things like that that are changing the way we're working today. So I think it's really important to meet people where they are, and utilizing their experience, skilling up with the foundational stuff, with the technologies. I would encourage everyone, if you haven't done that yet, to get on that, because it's not going to go away. And those, really are the sort of foundational things: the data, digital literacy and data, and finance and acumen and all of those things. Now, those are maybe one day going to become compliance, and then the other skills will help you navigate, and those inner power skills and the higher cognitive skills will really assist you in the new world of work.
Thanks, Jill. I saw a stat just this week that said that even people in AI roles have a 37% higher need for higher cognitive skills, things like the critical thinking and problem solving, creativity and innovation, and a 5% bump that they need in human skills, like the empathy and resilience and so on that you needed. So I think, it feels like gone are the days of just being in one track. You actually need to have that breadth. Mike and Tanya, what are you seeing in this space? What's jumping out for you?
So I'll jump in first. Tanya's got a lot to offer, so I'm going to keep myself brief here. But what I'll say is that, look, we've actually been in a massive transformation that we probably have not, many of us have never seen the like of before, and it starts in the mid 90s. So what we've been watching is actually a transformation, first moving into the age of information, where you get access to information a lot faster, and that's through the internet search engines and such. And then the building of knowledge management systems and ERPs and larger systems to make that the access to information readily available. What it used to be before that time is that you competed on how quickly you could actually make meaning from what little data that you had. Now you're awash in information, and now you have to make meaning from that. What's now started to shift since the mid 2010s is, not just generative AI, but a lot of the other augmentation that's been happening, whether it's robotic process automation or a lot of the other capabilities, machine learning. What this is starting to do is make that we're moving from the age of information to the age of knowledge. And in the age of knowledge, you have access to a lot more knowledge that's out there. So it's not how much you know that's going to matter as much. It's how quickly you can make meaning from what you know to apply it to what you need to do next. And this is really where the big shift is in play. You're competing on wisdom, not on knowledge anymore. And wisdom is really about judgment. It's about foresight. It's about insight. And really to focus on that, like Jill was saying before, these are power skills. This is really investing in, that space of understanding the context of how to apply that skill. So it's good to know the skill. It's good to be able to apply the skill. It's good to have a sort of competency in the skill, but it's even more important to understand, okay, so where's that, how is that used? Where's that going to actually make a difference? How can I make that powerful? And I think that, competing on wisdom then becomes that kind of thing. And being able to understand that in practice and understand the context really does make a difference. I'm going to pass the microphone over to Tanya because she's awesome on this topic, and I'm gonna just let her actually do her thing.
Okay, thank you for that, Mike. But you and Jill set it up perfectly. Jill, you talked to us about like the high level framework and the big fundamentals that we need to know. And Mike, I love that you said this is the age of access to knowledge. I want to add in a plus there. Plus, it's the age of access to people. So when we talk about wisdom, it's about how we curate and understand the responses that the AR chatbots are giving us, right? But you have a powerful network. Each and every one of us that is here today already has a powerful network of people, either personal relationships, professional relationships, people you have worked with for or had direct reports with. And these people you can tap into for wisdom, for opportunities, for kind of reflection back on who you are and remembering to own your worth in this this place of transition, or as you set up and get ready for a new beginning. So I just want to put out there that I think one of the most important skills right now is networking, mentorship, sponsorship, leaning into those things. And I know as I say these words, probably some of you are cringing, especially that word networking. Give us a +1 in the chat box if you feel a little cringe, even at the thought or the word networking, because I think we also have to acknowledge that you're not alone. So there's +1s coming in. Look at that. You are not alone, right? And it is important. And you've got to find your way of doing it. Whether you're an interviewer, whether you're technical, whether you prefer one-on-ones versus big groups, find your way.
I love that, Tanya. And so, what is the mindset shift that helps somebody move from that kind of what now to what if? And how do they lean into the types of things you're talking about?
I'll kick it off. I think that when we're going through transition, the first thing is sometimes we want to bounce really quickly into that next chapter or that new beginning. And what I've learned pretty recently is that there is value in taking a pause, whether that's a pause to refuel, re energize, feel joy and happy if your last transition was abrupt or a surprise. Give yourself permission and freedom to refuel, to get back to center, to feel joy and happiness, because from that place, you're going to be able to make the right choices and pitch yourself with more confidence and clarity. And the other part of that, I'd say, is give yourself time to perhaps grieve. This is something I always skipped over in transitions, and it came back days, weeks, sometimes months or years later to bite me. Sometimes we need to grieve an ending. And whatever way you do that, if that is journaling, if that is taking time to process and to honor what was in order to create space for what is. So I'd say give yourself time, freedom, and permission to do those things.
So I'll definitely add on to this. What I'll share. Tanya's got it right. I think that the interesting challenge that we take is that oftentimes in any transition, whether it's something that you directly chose or whether it was actually something that happened to you, you always have how you frame what happened. And the most important thing that you actually have to own is your part in this story and your narrative in this story. So taking the moment to reflect, taking the moment to think through, it sounds like it's I need to get a job. I need to actually, and we start to actually get very agitated and very anxious. The fact is, however, is operating from a space of fear means that you're going to cut yourself off from actually the power that you have and the real strength that you need if you're going to be the person that's going to help lead tomorrow is not in actually being as fear driven as you possibly can and operating from anxiety. That doesn't help anyone. It just makes other people feel anxious around you. Instead, what you really need to do is start connecting better. And I know that networking is, for me at least, it's a dirty word. I actually have a hard time with it. But the fact is actually the more that you're able to connect and the more that you're able to shape your narrative, to understand, to reflect on what matters and why, and then to bring that forward, that's going to help you not only with whatever it is you're going to take on next, but it's also going to help you grow. And that's really the key component part of this. And really, I just want to kind of draw attention to this, that we don't spend enough time reflecting on the fact that machines, you can feed them data and they can continue to adjust and adjust and adjust. But humans, if you treated a human like that, after about 15, 20 minutes, maybe a few hours for those of us that have a little bit more discipline, after about a few hours of that, we're just like, enough, I'm done. You can't stop feeding me information. I can't take any more of this, right? The fact is we need time to actually reflect, connect it with what matters to us. Why is this so emotionally meaningful to me? And so machines can actually do continuous learning, which is always happening. But humans need continual learning, where you stop and you reflect and you connect and you make that part of your story. And so this is really what you actually, owning that part of this is a key component part to being effective tomorrow and effective today as well. So Jill, I don't know if you've got some really awesome stuff that you've done. I've seen some of it. So I'd love to actually hear what you have.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I would say, really starting with the small wins, and, even the small ones really do make, like, what is making you energized? So what has, really impacted you on a personal level? And if someone's thanked you for something, or what did you do? Those are the things that people are recognizing within you that are special about you. And those can, be your super superpowers, really. And leaning into your community, as we've been talking about, is very, very important. So I really believe in the connection. And at Modern Minds, we just stood up our first Future Ready Skills certification program, and during the pilot, before we went beta to live, a lot of the pilot participants said, they felt a little bit lonely and what have you. And the human connection piece is what we've added. So we have that community added to that now, which is the engagement piece. And, really getting value out of what other people see. Um, you know, Sometimes your superpowers are invisible to yourself, but others can maybe provide you with feedback. So don't really be afraid to reach out, because sometimes you're not recognizing those superpowers that you have within you, but others will help you to amplify.
It's such a great point, Jill. And we have a question in the chat about who's one person who changed your career just by making a connection, and what did they do? So I'll open that up to all three of you if you could think of an example that you'd want to share. Who wants to start?
I have
I'll start.
okay.
You go first, Jill. I'll go
It's
second.
okay.
You first.
I just spoke, so Mike, by all
No,
means.
no. You first. You first.
Well, I'm just thinking. I love that question because it's truly something that has been a big influence on myself in my career and navigating through a lot of difficult things that I had to solve for at work. Is again the community. So I've been a member of the Triple CE community, which is a Canadian community of corporate educators. I'm giving it a plug there. And what it has done for me, one of the people that I knew that was a member said, come on out. Her name is Alice Smith. So, Alice, if you're watching, thank you for that. So I've been a member for almost 30 years. And what I was trying to solve for at work was I've always been in ed tech. So I was really having a troubled time figuring out how everybody else was upskilling. Now, think about this. It's 30 years ago. So there wasn't the internet at work. We had to use CD-ROMs and all of that thing. And what really helped me solve for some of the things that I was asked to do at work was, overcome things. So having connection to other people and organizations, learning from them and bringing them back to assist me, that community piece and networking. I love networking. So I've met people, and that really bridged me to not only solve for some of those things, but also, learn from others. So I would say that.
Thanks, Jill. Mike, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. So what I'll share is a story from I used to work at Harvard Business School publishing about 100 million years ago. And it feels like it. I just actually realized that one of the movies that I watched as a kid, the guy just turned 51 today, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm feeling old, and that's all relative. But the thing is that um, so I was at Harvard, and I was, it's very easy to get starstruck because you're constantly surrounded by people that are world famous, and rightfully so. And it's hard to actually find your voice and actually push back on certain things when they're not actually right, and where you need to actually push on something. And I remember actually working with a professor who's actually, probably his name is very well known to probably most of the people in here, Clay Christensen. And one of the things that he had actually done was he said to me, he goes, you don't agree with me. And I said, well, not on this. I said, I generally agree with you. And I was trying to find a way to soft shoe it or soft soap it. The fact is that he stopped and he said, good, tell me what you're thinking. I'm curious about it. That, what is it fully formed? What are you stuck on? And it was in that moment, by just asking the question, recognizing that it was actually, and giving permission to dig into it. So the thing was literally about when does innovation, it was actually a conversation about innovation. We're building a product that we brought to market. Um, and one of the things that he was talking about was actually innovation in teams. And The point that I actually was worried about was that he wasn't addressing the power relationships that often prevent innovation from happening. And he said, I've been in academia too long, I suppose, because I actually missed that. And he said, it's a good point. I do actually talk about that a lot, but I think I need to actually probably frame it out of the gate because it's something that we need to do. How could we do that? And even though we ended up not putting that in the product, it was just that moment of, you know, having that moment, making that space and making that time. That made the difference to me. And I think it's also shaped the way I actually, when I come across someone that's not necessarily agreeing with me, I sort of step back a moment and say, is this a Clay Christensen moment for me? And that's sort of what's changed me. Um, so I think that that's the way I would sort of answer that. Uh,
Thanks, Mike. Tanya, I wonder if you could pivot just slightly. I saw another question come in on the chat saying, can you speak more about the difference between being effectively vulnerable versus needy? And I know you
Yeah,
do a lot of work with.
yeah, absolutely. So I read that. Jory, hold on, let me get their name correctly. So thank you for sharing that, Jory. About being vulnerable when you're reaching out to people. And the best advice I ever got, it was from a coach who kind of yelled it at my face. It was very um, harsh the way I heard this advice, but I've internalized it. I'm still working on internalizing it. It is this: not everyone is going to like you. And when we can accept that as truth, as a fact, we take things less personally. We know that when we reach out, maybe we're going to 20% open rate to our email. We'll get a one person will respond out of the 50 requests that we've sent out, or connection requests on LinkedIn, or the resumes that we've sent out. When we understand that we're not everybody's cup of tea, for me, what that's done is it's let me exhale a bit. It's reminded me that I can be all of who I am and know that I'm going to find my people, that the right people are going to appreciate and value my skill set, my energy, the big eyes and big teeth that come out at you live or via Zoom, as some of you are experiencing right now. Like that's who I am, right? So the right people will navigate, will respond, will want to work with me and know that I can provide immense value. So I think in the networking context, that's given me freedom and permission, and it's given me the fuel to keep going, to keep making those requests, and to know that sometimes it's going to work out, sometimes it's not, and freedom. It's given me freedom.
Thank you, Tanya. That resonates so much with me. And I'll just tuck in one example myself. I've had many mentors. I'm very thankful for that. I had one who was particularly bold. I was always sort of like the stage manager and the back of the house person trying to set everybody up for success. And one day she basically threw me out on the stage and said, "What's the worst that can happen?" And so I've remembered that because we're not talking about brain surgery and most of the things that we do every single day. Be bold, and what's the worst that can happen? And you'll learn from that. And so I see her sort of, on my shoulder almost every single day now as we're doing things that we've maybe never done before. So, Tanya, I love the approach that you've been talking about in terms of how you connect with people and how you set them up for success. What is one practical way people can discover and articulate their strengths, especially if they're not feeling confident? You're an active leadership trainer in this space, so how do you help people connect with what makes them great?
Okay, I want to give an actionable tool here because I think it's so important in times like this, in times of transition, in that messy middle. Sometimes we forget who we are. We forget to own our awesomeness. We forget that there is a whole lot of life experience that has brought us to this moment in our career journey. And so, one way that we can remember this is actually to do some market research, right? So, I'm going to offer you, everyone here, a tool and an exercise. And I want to encourage you to do this in the next 24 hours. Okay. So you're going to think of 10 people in your life, 5 people in your professional life, a former boss, maybe your current boss, a mentor, sponsor, a mentee, suppliers or clients you had great relationships with. Then think of 5 people in your personal life: your partner, your kids, if you're courageous enough, your best friend, your siblings, your parents, the neighbors, the people you play hockey with or do Zumba with, right? People who know and love you. You're going to send them a text and ask them this one question: what 3 words describe me best? And I guarantee, first of all, the responses will come flooding in. You will be surprised and delighted at how many case stories, studies, examples, and words your target audience is reflecting back to you. But what's more important is that at the end of the day, these are the people that you want to have an impact on. They're people who you want to influence and inspire to take action. So they are pointing out the unique value that you bring to their life. They are reflecting that back to you. You're going to want to do two things. Number one, keep this list. There's moments where we need that pump me up, right? We all have those bad days, those moments where we feel less than, unworthy. We don't fully own our space and who we are. In those moments, pull out this list, read it. Whether it's a post-it on your bathroom mirror or the wallpaper to your desktop, keep this list handy and let it fuel you in moments when you need it. The second thing I invite you to do is look for trends. Is the way that you're showing up in your professional life similar to the way you're showing up in your personal life? And then there's a moment of reflection there. Maybe you want there to be a gap. From my own personal experience, when there's a gap in how you're showing up at work and at home, it's draining. I've done that, and it was very draining to cover parts of my identity and who I was. When I gave myself the freedom and the permission and felt the psychological safety to be all of who I was at work, everything changed. I was more innovative. I was able to connect with people better. I progressed in my career. So look for trends and take a moment to reflect on what are those words. And then if you have the chance, integrate those words in your LinkedIn bio, yeah, in your resumes, in your CVs, in your conversations. Remind people the value that you're uniquely bringing and then link it into service, how you're going to add value, how you're going to serve others. So again, I think I'm going to give us a +1 in the chat if you're going to take action and do this exercise in the next 24 hours. Yeah.
Tanya, how do you turn that into your story? So as people are responding in the chat, how do you actually make it into a story? That could be a hard jump.
It's easier than we think, Gina. You know what? When people, because people don't often just give you the word, they will give an example or story or a case study. And that's the magic. They're kind of giving you these examples that you had forgotten about or didn't even know was a curated example and story. And those are the stories that you want to bring in interviews when you're talking about how you collaborate with the team, how you help, how you are triumphant in a moment of challenge, right? So I think you want to connect the dots and listen for these stories, these case studies and these examples, and then integrate that into your LinkedIn bio, and conversations as you're going through the interview process.
Mike, you've talked a lot about trying to create a story when you've had a non-linear or a non-traditional path. How did you navigate that?
I think that Tanya's advice is just absolutely stellar, and it's a really important one. I think the thing that I've actually struggled with, but at the same time, I've learned to really kind of channel, is I recognize that I have a very vivid imagination. And sometimes this imagination gets me into some real challenges. It's nothing like, the Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I'm not that kind of, wildness. But what I've actually done differently is I guess I started to really reframe it in my own head and sort of say, look, rather than seeing all of the obstacles in front of me, what are the opportunities that are actually in front of me? And so understanding that actually what you have is a power in yourself to actually reframe that. And so that's been one of the things that has made a difference. And it's sort of the same concept that Tanya was just sharing. So I just really want to kind of underline that exercise, listening to others and really listening to what they're saying, and then starting to connect it with your understanding of yourself, what you've actually done, how did you get here, and understanding that as part of your narrative, your story, and making that part of the thing that, okay, so how do I actually reframe what I'm seeing? Instead of seeing it as an obstacle, how do I see it as an opportunity? What does it need to be? What would have to be true for this to be true? And those kinds of questions. And learning to do that and use that as an exercise really has made a difference.
That's so powerful. Thank you, Mike. We've had a question come in on the chat that I think is tied to what we're talking about. So what part of your identity is not tied to your work, but maybe should be celebrated more? Jill, not to put
Jill,
you on the spot, but do you want to start?
Sorry, the question was celebrated more. So something
Yeah,
that you
what
don't
part?
bring to work. Yeah. Okay. I would say, celebrating the things that you may not think you should, or you've, toned down at work. Um, reflecting back, I did a similar exercise. I love Tania's exercise, by the way. I went through a difficult time. I went through a transitional shift. And what really amplified me was, using that and thinking about it in a way that this isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. So that's the mindset shift. So I wasn't feeling like this happened to me. It was like, I think this is happening to me for a reason. And then I started to, bring that authentic myself. That's one of the reasons I started my own company and became an entrepreneur, because I actually allowed myself to be myself and bring the creativity and the networking and the fundamental Jill to what I do now, which is very different from, boxing yourself in a corporate role and worried about, your image. And, don't worry about ironing out all those wrinkles, just let it be. And like Tania said, not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay, but you have to accept it within yourself, understand who you are, and then carry on. And, you know, it's happening for you, is what I would recommend.
Thank you. Mike and Tania, anything you'd like to add from your perspective?
Can I add one? Recently I was recruiting, and I really appreciated when a new mom put in her resume her career break, her maternity leave, because she detailed the skills that she had learned, everything from multitasking, prioritization, managing others in a big way. And I thought it was creative, innovative, and candid. And I think, each of us, if you have caregiving responsibilities, whether that's caregiving for an elder parent, if that's a small child being a parent, a step parent, or, you're caring for someone in your community, sometimes it has been taboo to talk about that in the workplace, especially during the recruiting process. But very rarely is that a role that you can hide for very long, because it's such a big part of who you are and part of your life. So instead of trying to hide it, what if we embraced it? What if we owned the narrative and positioned it in a way that is really candid and innovative and shows that there is a skill set being built, and being able to prioritize and multitask and be a project manager in so many different aspects actually makes you an even better employee. So owning your narrative, and it does take courage, and it's going to feel very brave because it is so new in our world today. But if we want to be the change, maybe we start with ourselves, and that's something we can work on.
Thank you, Tania. Mike, did you have anything to add?
I just want to kind of draw attention to two things that I heard in both what Tania shared and Jill shared. Jill's switch of the dative uh, happened to me to happen for me, right? In Latin, that's the same preposition. In English, it's different, right? So I find that to be a really interesting kind of, just by changing a preposition, that you actually change the way that you look at things, that you can reframe just by rethinking how you talk about it and what you say. And I think that Tania's point as well, with the fact is that there's a way to look at something and look at it as, in a darker tone or in a softer tone, or maybe you don't actually in a not as confident a tone, but actually having the recognition that the thing that matters really to companies is not just that you can do X skill. That does matter, right? But that you can do X skill amongst these people that are going to be part of the group that you're going to be working with, and you're going to fit in well, and you're going to be part of this group. And so the more that you actually show that you can connect, that you can actually, that you're that that you show yourself that human side of you. And I don't think it necessarily is weakness, and I don't think of it as actually something that you should put down. I think the thing that you really need to do is to make that visible to people, because that's also part of this story. Because as the technology becomes much more powerful to be able to do certain kinds of basic kinds of capabilities, what's going to matter more is how you can connect and start thinking differently to produce better results or different results, or how you're going to make that difference to someone else. So I think that, I just want to draw attention to both what Jill and Tania said. I think that they're very powerful points, and I think that these are things that we should carry with us.
Um, so true, Mike, and thank you for sharing. We just had a question come in the chat, and so I think it relates very closely to what Jill brought up, and all of you. What's one change in your life that felt terrible at the time, but turned out to be a blessing? Let's give
Is
you
that
a second
is
to
that to
think.
me? Maybe?
Do you want to start, Jill? Are you
Oh,
good with starting?
all of us. I'm just thinking of one thing. Um, on a personal note, something happened in my son when he was younger. When he was 5 years old, he got type 1 diabetes. And I just thought, oh boy, I can't handle this. This is like, I didn't even know what the word meant. I thought diabetes was like death or something. And what ended up happening is really, like, instead of it feeling like the end of the world, working through it and understanding it, and advocating for him and learning more about it and making him champion it and be a leader was really quite incredible. So I think that was a very big moment in my life where I thought, the sky was falling and all of that kind of thing. And then it ended up being wonderful. We raised a lot of money for the Juvenile Diabetes Association, and we went on all the walks, and we made it more of a win than something that was felt as at the time like the end of the world. So I think there's hope for every situation. It's, you just have to give it some time.
Amazing. Thank you, Jill, for sharing that. Tanya and Mike, is there a story that you'd want to share?
In one of my previous roles, I remember being the youngest, the only female, the only person of color, and the only North American in this pan-European team. Being the only one in so many different ways was very lonely, very lonely. Often days I felt like I was just surviving instead of thriving. Um, and those were dark moments where I really questioned if I was in the right place with the right people. And I questioned myself a lot. And there were low points in staying there longer than I should have, perhaps, or, not. It actually, feeling that made me recognize that I'm the one to make a change. And it actually, when I got out of that and decided to own my narrative, bring more of who I really was into work, things started to change for me. And then I also felt empowered to make a change from that environment. And it is the best thing that's ever happened in my life because I refuse to go back. I think sometimes when we know how icky moments feel or the way that we're showing up in tough moments, there's this muscle memory that we won't go there again. And so it is propelling me forward. Now I talk about it on keynote stages. It's part of my keynote, right? It's there to inspire others to like bring all of who you are. So it dramatically changed my life. It is not easy, but it's going to be a great story later on.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Mike, do you have something you'd like to share?
You know, I've been through quite a few downturns over the course of my career. The Y2K, the .com, .bomb, the 9/11, each of those happened in quick succession and actually were really kind of traumatic. The Great Recession, an interesting downturn that hasn't really gotten a name yet in 2013, 2014. And then, so I've watched these kinds of things over the course of my career. And I guess it was actually in that 13, 14 period that I really just started to say, I've turtled up most of my career, and I tried to actually make myself something that would be palatable for someone else. But it really didn't add anything, either value to the organizations I was a part of or anything for me personally. And I guess the thing is sort of the same kind of concept that both Jill and Tanya were sharing, is that, the thing that actually I started to do differently after the downturn that was in 2013-14 was I owned the things that I knew, the experiences that I've had, the insights, the foresight that I could bring. I recognized what my limits were, what I actually couldn't be. And I tried not to puff myself up to be something more than I was. And it was in that moment where it was like, I'm not helping anyone by trying to be something that I'm not. And I'm not actually adding anything to really prove what I am. So how about I flip it on its head and do it the exact opposite way? I guess that's sort of the same kind of advice that both Jill and Tanya were sharing. So Gina, I say no, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you for adding and not adding then. I'm curious how your experiences that you've each shared, how's that changed you as a coach and a mentor? Because I know all of you mentor people every day and try and help people show up in their very best way.
I'll start with that one because the thing that I find the most important, this has been one of the things that's really important to me, is that the biggest impact that you can actually have is helping shape someone else's success, because actually it pays in greater dividends than anything you can actually individually do on your own. And really the time that I've spent helping others grow and asking questions, sometimes it's just a well-placed question is all that you need to do. But I think the thing that's really that I learned along the way that was actually kind of different was that the more time that I started spending asking those questions, the more it started actually making me think about, what does that mean to me? And in some ways, actually asking someone else to help him or her grow has actually been almost a sort of self-discovery in an ironic way. But it sort of was, because as I started asking these questions, I started asking, well, wait a second, what do I actually think about that? And so, as I'm driving home, or I'm doing X, or I'm doing Y, or I'm at the gym, or I'm doing something else, it would just be these moments where I'm constantly, thinking through the questions that I asked earlier to help someone else, and really just being curious about someone else's, how's that really going to help you? What do you really hope to get out of that? And then by actually then turning that back inwards, that was really kind of, I guess, the thing that was different for me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Tanya?
Just bouncing off that, I totally agree, Mike. I think it's, we get being a mentor, it gets you so reflective, and it reminds us to be vulnerable and not just share the successes. I think real leadership and leadership we need to see more of today means that we're vulnerable, that we're empathetic, that we share failures and who we are as a result. So I think, really bringing that courage into mentorship and sponsorship, it reminds people that we are all human, no matter our title and our roles and the level or the department that you're in. And as a mentee, being prepared is really important. Knowing that you're the one driving the agenda, coming up with the questions, doing the research, and asking really good, powerful questions. Not something, tell me about your career history. You could read that on their LinkedIn profile. That's boring. So it's like, how can we ask better questions both on both sides, but especially as a mentee or the protege, make that time memorable and create that psychological safety saying, hey, I really want to talk about candid stuff. The way that, in the half an hour that we have today, can we keep it confidential? So there's also that safety for them to share important, vulnerable stories with you. So create that psychological safety, be prepared, ask great questions. And as a mentor, reflect, because do it more often, because it's a wonderful reflective exercise and growth opportunity for you.
So well said, Tanya.
Sorry,
Jill?
I was just going to add, I was I was thinking that through, because people often, reach out to us and say, you know, I I don't know where to start with, I'm experienced, but I'm later in my career, what have you. And I always tell them that really their transferable skills and their experience that they have today is their career passport, and they don't have to frame it in the context of the jobs that they're seeing that the future of work necessarily has and what have you. They can, you know they can travel across different industries and roles without having to, think of it in that way. They bring project management and some of the things, to the table, and those things can be amplified. um, and they can see high growth success today with that. It's just that mindset. They have to switch their mind and understand that those transferable skills will help them. They just have to understand that they have to amplify them in a way that, maybe some organizations and the way people are being filtered to get roles and what have you, but they have to stand out. But they are, they're relevant, and you can still use them in a different way, in a creative way, in the new world.
Thank you so much. Let's do a quick last question. So, what's one thing you hope people take away from today's session, and one move you hope they make today to move forward with more clarity or confidence? Jill, can I start with you?
Oh, fun. Yeah. So start today, and make it simple, and learn a skill that you never thought you would think you'd learn outside of your comfort zone. And day after day, you're gonna feel good about yourself. So if you're feeling stuck or you don't know where to begin, just start with, you know every day with a new mindset, and every day learn something new.
Thanks, Jill. Mike, do you want to go next?
Yeah, there are two questions there. So the first question, what do I hope they take away? I hope that they actually try Tanya's exercise. I
Yes.
think it's a powerful one to do, and I hope that they actually, some of the things that Jill was sharing about skills and transferability of skills is really important. I guess the thing I just sort of would want to make sure that I think that people also understand is that what's going to actually help is how well you can communicate, how well you learn, and how quickly you learn, and how focused you are on actually making a difference. And you convey that not always by what you say, but what you do and how you show up and the questions that you ask. So when you get those moments to actually engage with someone, whether it's in an interview or whether it's actually in some sort of networking, how much time did you actually spend preparing and thinking about what kinds of things could you ask? What kinds of things should you ask? That time that you spend in those moments just reflecting and connecting actually will make a huge difference, because people will start to look at you differently. They'll start to see you as someone that not only can do, which is important and that you have done, but that for that which isn't understood, you're not afraid and will do. And that to me is actually what helps distinguish someone that's a good candidate from someone that's a candidate that's going to make a difference. Because I can tell you that the companies themselves are also struggling, because they're looking around going, everything is changing, all of our processes need to change, all of our technologies need to change. How do I actually upskill my entire company while I change all the processes around me and compete against people that I've never competed against before? And the more that you actually show that sort of that mindset to learn faster or to engage more, that and that's not what you say, it's what you do, the more that you're probably going to stand out. And I'll stop there.
Th- Thank you, Mike. Tanya.
Building on that from an action and accountability standpoint, yes, do this personal branding exercise. Do it within the next 24 hours. If you commit to doing that, you'll get it done. And remembering, it is a moment to remember who you are. And here's what I want you to take away. What I would love for you to remember is that no one has your unique vantage point. No one has the talent, the strengths, the unique perspective that you have. So there's a real opportunity here for you to own your voice, to own your contribution, and to remember that there's unique value that you can bring to every interview, every team, every touch point, and to own your narrative.
Thank you so much, Tanya, Mike, and Jill. We're coming up to the top of the hour. I want to thank all of you for joining, and we've learned so many things today from this amazing panel about owning your voice, about where you can be empowered, how you can take control of your skill building, how you can show up with your story, and how to really, take that perspective of vulnerability to be able to lead you forward so that you can connect with people, you can stand up, you can stand out. So skills can be your superpower, and the ability to be vulnerable and connect with people can make it come to life. So thank you all for being here today. A huge thank you to our panelists for sharing your strategies, tips, stories, and we'll make sure that we get that great tool out in the messages that go out after the session, so that you've got Tanya's frame in front of you. And make sure to remember, above all, that you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. So as you're reinventing yourself, it doesn't need to be dramatic. It just starts with a single step. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for being part of the Atheon community, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.